Okay, Gladiators, welcome. So today we're going to do our sit-down interview with Lieutenant Colonel Menendez, the Battalion Commander, 232nd Medical Battalion. Sir, thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
So today we're talking about H2F again, continuing the conversations from before, but I really wanted to know what your vision for H2F was and how do you implement it here in the 232nd?
So vision. So I guess the background, which is probably important to understand, which is H2F as a concept, holistic fitness as a concept that's not new, and it's not actually new to the Army. Ranger Regiment had been doing a version of this, 12, 13 years ago. And while I was there, the Ranger Athlete Warrior Program, which essentially is what it eventually has turned into this thing, did all these things. So part of the idea was that while there, what we saw is that if we could sort of get to the left of the injuries, as opposed to being a medical cell focused on you're hurt and we got to send you to the doctor and we got to figure out how to fix you, what if we just get to the left side of that problem and strengthen issues, correct problems, and then get you just be a fitter athlete? And then what we end up dealing with is not major injuries, it's always sort of minuscule corrections and things that you were doing. Or if there's a major injury, then the population that you're dealing with is much smaller, so you can focus more attention on them. So we sort of become a prehab versus injury control measure as a battalion. So the idea here is, hey, we know H2F is coming, we know H2F is a major Army program, and if you pick up the book and read it, and again, it's sort of the principles of RAW, in my perspective was, oh man, I've done this before, it really works. It will really work at the battalion level, even though the assets now are at the brigade level. But then how do we make this in so it works here? So then the vision for here is, well, even though the battalion has 350 permanent cadre, we float about 1,700 students all the time. So we're floating around 2,000 people all the time. So that's a brigade size. Yeah, let's pay out of hide and figure out a way to do the same thing for both populations. How do we do it for the students? So the students that are coming in, of which we had a lot of injuries, so we can get ahead of the problem, or at least identify the problem when they get off the bus, get them healed, get them rehab, and graduate folks. And then for a cadre, how do we change the culture of what you think fitness is, so we get you into this sort of ranger mentality of, hey, just identify the problem early, correct the problem early, fix the problem early, don't let it become an injury.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we see that with how we're running the Gladiator program right now. We've been able to make pretty good strides as far as getting those soldiers back into the force, and we hear pretty regularly. We actually got a comment the other day from a soldier that's thanking us, like, hey, I've been a part of the Gladiator program, it was awesome. So it's super good to know that there's validation. Like, soldiers appreciate what we're trying to get after here, which is great.
100%. And I think it's the anecdotals, right? It's the soldier that shows up with hip pain that turns out to be something really serious, that has her hip pinned in surgery, recovers, rehabilitates, trains for strength, and graduates, passes the ACFT and everything, right, and gets out of here. The anecdotal of like, oh my gosh, that's great, but you could only do that once. And then there's the, in the macro it works too, right? It's year on year, 100 MEBs, 20. That means potentially 80 not necessary MEBs, and 20 MEBs that were like, no, legitimately, this is a condition that you have prior to service, or an injury they have that's actually so serious that there's no way for you to actually recover and get back into training. And that number actually for this year is actually even smaller. So I think the data is absolutely there, right? So it does work, it does prevent. And I think the other part of this, and the sort of holistic, is I think showing the soldiers, not just saying that we care, but showing the soldiers that we care by putting assets towards them and showing them that we care, and bringing them out and sort of taxing ourselves to help them, gets you buy-in. And I always keep saying, right, then it's my insurgency. My insurgency is that these folks learn to care about people, and then they go out to the Army, and then that's the way they were treated, so that's just the way they treat other people. So all around win.
It is an all-around win, and while they're at it too, which I really appreciate, is they're learning so much more about how their body is supposed to move, which is something that we try to get after every day. So they take that learning and that knowledge and understanding, and they share it. So like when they see somebody else doing something incorrect, they're like, hey, I learned this at Gladiator program. So
we're building future NCOs already to get after the current issue that we could be having here, which is I always love telling people the story. I joined the Army, I went to Fort Bragg, and it was common in Fort Bragg for your first sergeant to be in front of formation. It was very early 90s. Cup of coffee, cigarette, information while telling you what you were about to do. Then he would put both down, and we'd go for a 5-mile run, right? So you just always use the 5-mile run. That's what you're gonna do on our dens, right? So those roads are tilted, so you wonder why, like your hips always hurt because you're always running sideways. And then you come back, and he'd immediately pick up where he was, like a cup of coffee, a cigarette, and people sort of admired that, like, oh my gosh, man, cup of coffee, cigarette, run. That's what we do every morning. So you try to find a little bit of that culture. I don't think it's that extreme now, but you're trying to find a little bit of the, I've done it this way and it worked for me, versus what I think when we're medical, what we see, which is this is sustainable for a little while, and you can push through a minor problem until it turns into an injury, and you can actually push through an injury until it turns into a major problem. But then things escalate from an ache to a permanent profile really fast, and that thing becomes a disability when you get out, and no big deal. But then it becomes you in the time that you're supposed to be enjoying your life, right? Because you're retired, you can do whatever you want. Not being able to do that because of, I'm just going to push through this little whatever. You're trying to break that culture. That's tough, right? Because you're trying to teach people, I got it. You've been doing it for a lot of years, but I also see you limping when you walk, or I always see that when you lift, your hips are swinging to one side, so you have a weakness in one side of your body you need to fix. Or I see that when you squat down, your heels come up. You don't have flexibility. You should probably fix that. Stop lifting. So you're trying to break culture and teach culture to the new kids. If the new kids can leave here with that mentality already, that's a super win.
Oh, big time win. Yeah, and we're catching them early too. So this is like brand new in their career. So they don't have an opportunity to get those bad habits from those first sergeants who were smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee.
That's a long time ago.
But I mean, there's still that still exists. So yeah, we're teaching them good habits right out the gate, so they understand and know what to do right away. So they're an asset and not a liability when they get to wherever they're going. And that's something that I'm always like pumped about, thinking like, hey, I'm providing the next medical platoon sergeant with a quality soldier that knows how to move appropriately and is ready for whatever challenges. And that's what makes me pumped up about the program.
I think it'll be good. I think in the long term, something that looks a little, well, master fitness trainer obviously, right? But something that maybe looks more like Army combatives, where different levels, you get taught something and you become an entry level, right? You know how to do the function, but you can't necessarily teach the function. But if you saw something, you can correct it, versus a level 2, which is, I know the basic functions and I know a little bit more, and I also know how to teach the basic functions to somebody else. So by the time you get to the team leader level, you're doing that. And then by the time you get to be a level 3 or 4, right, you're a squad leader, platoon sergeant or above, they're the ones that are making sure that the programs are happening appropriately, right? And then you learn different things. How do I do programming? Really difficult, right? But not unbearable and not impossible. Or how do I actually not just preach nutrition, but create an environment where nutrition actually becomes a thing that we do? And then the trifecta. How do we get people to go to bed on time? How do we get them to sleep 8 hours and get them back up? So.
Yeah, the sleep issue is it's a challenge, especially in this environment. Is there anything that you foresee in the future is something that we might try to do or implement?
Here, so that's sort of become the goal, right? So I'm at 14 months right now, so I'm feeling pressure to, like, I want to fix it, but it's tough. The amount of training that we do, the amount of time that we have, the time that we put folks to bed and get them back up, we're continuously fighting the POI and requirements monster, because at some point the only white space is the sleep time. So someone's just gonna be like, just leave people alone, let them sleep. So I've been proposed a couple of things that I'm super game for, and I'm willing to try, at least in a small group, just to see if it actually makes a difference in outcomes. One is that one of the instructors asked me, one of the OICs, if they could do post-lunch naps.
Okay.
And I said, wait, I actually said that. He said, continue. He says, well, here's the problem we're having. I stand in every class after lunch, and he walks classroom to classroom, and he sees the exact same problem in every classroom, right? So the kids are getting up at 4:30 in the morning to start doing PT. By the time they get to 1 in the afternoon, they're just not mission functional. Particularly, you know, walk in the heat, eat a heavy lunch.
Yeah.
You put them in the classroom, it's quiet and it's PowerPoint, so you're killing them. So he says, I'd rather bring him in, and if I'm already going to lose the time because they're not paying attention and I'm making corrections, I'd rather give them earplugs, a little face cover, and tell them, lay down on the ground, we're going to take a quick 30-minute nap.
Okay.
And then we're all going to get up and continue to go. I was like, well, it's your POI, so I'll play your game. But I'm actually kind of curious. I'm actually curious if you could pay off a little bit of sleep that in the day, would that lead to a better outcome? And if there's no risk in doing that during the day, right? When we're not harming people, we're not saying run across the street and through a group of cars, right? Then why not, right? Then there might be something worthwhile to try. The other one is kind of the conversation that led from there was, I'm going to do capitalism. I want to make a system that makes your system irrelevant. Like, I want to just be able to put everybody to bed. So then the challenge becomes, in this environment, we're supposed to do fire guard and you know, safe and secure and separate the soldiers, but we have cameras, we have everything else. So part of it is, can we just put everybody to bed? I mean, there literally aren't cameras, right? Just put everybody to bed. 8 hours. Just sleep 8 hours. And once you go in your room, if you choose to not sleep, I imagine some folks might do that.
Yeah.
But I imagine a lot of folks are just going to go to sleep because they're smoked by the end of the day.
Probably, yeah.
And let's see if there's a quantifiable difference in outcomes. Although this has been studied. There was a drill sergeant study down at Fort Jackson doing just that. Drill sergeants that were asked to, hey, you're going to go to sleep, you're going to measure it, we're going to make sure you do it, versus just do your normal duty day. The amount of accidents and trouble that the folks got into when they didn't get an opportunity to do that was higher. One of the Ranger battalions just put out a study. It was performance in marksmanship versus sleep. Surprise, if you don't get enough sleep, your marksmanship is not as good. And then there's plenty of studies on the how little sleep do you have to have before it starts being equivalent to being drunk, right? So lack of sleep versus drunk driving. At what point is lack of sleep the same as drunk driving? Well, there's a number. You know, and it could be a single night of doing that, or it could be a cumulative effect over time that does that.
Yeah, that's true.
You gotta fix it, man.
It's intense. And then also, you know, making sure that the soldiers understand good sleep hygiene and habits and stuff. And that's something that the cadre can help them get after, especially if we're establishing a good sleep climate. And if we explore any of these initiatives, that's stuff that we get to talk to the students about. So that's exciting.
So the key is, it's you guys.
Yes. Yes.
The key is, how do we get the cadre, who again has a culture that, well, I've done this and it works, why would I change it? To understand that, no, I got it. You can eat a pizza pie a day and you're okay. I mean, you're not, right? Inside, your cholesterol's out of control, you're dying. But, and I don't have to sleep that much. Yeah, but you're carrying a monster, you're carrying coffee all day long, so you're stimulating all day long, sometimes so late that by the time you stop taking whatever that stimulant is, you don't actually get to go to sleep, and then you're causing the problem in the morning anyways, right? Because now you're exhausted because you didn't really get a restful night. Yeah, the key is, how do we educate our NCOs, and then how do we build this new NCOs coming into the Army? So that's just part of the culture off the bat, you know, so that, hey, it's already noon, I'm not gonna have coffee because I go to bed at 8 o'clock, or 8 or 9 at night, because I like to get up in the morning, and the first thing I do in the morning is not drink up a cup of coffee. I just naturally wake up because I'm rested. And instead, I drink my first half liter, I drink my first liter of water, and I do my pre-workout nutrition stuff, whatever, you know, piece of bread with some peanut butter on it, and I'm ready to roll. Yeah. Versus a cup of coffee, cigarette. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Managing and teaching, well, teaching individuals how to manage their own circadian rhythm, that's a task.
PhD.
Yeah.
But it's feasible, right?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, once upon a time, when there were no TVs, the sun went down, and if you were fresh out of candles, you just went to bed. Or if you didn't have a fire in the cave, you just, somebody stands in the front with a rock and everybody else goes to sleep, right? I suppose they still have fire guard, which is kind of ironic. But your rhythm was based on the fact that at night you just couldn't function, right? You just bed down, protect yourself, go to sleep. We just have to find ways to do that. We just destroy that with the light then we worsen it with TV, and then we worsen it with the accessibility of the phone, and then we worsen it with the anxiety that people have about, I have to keep an eye on my phone because something may happen, and in FOMO, I might miss out. So I'm just gonna stay on the phone until late at night, or I'm gonna play a video game, and I like to play with people in Japan, so I'm gonna stay up at midnight so I can play with people. I've heard it all. It's crazy, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Versus, oh my gosh, no, let's go back to holistic. Just be here, man. Just be here.
Yeah.
Be here with this great group of volunteers, right? And just learn to communicate and just sort of become a better human. It's tough. Yeah. I love saying it, that it's, to me, it's a capitalism thing, right? I have to show you how this is better than that.
Yeah.
I don't want to force you to do it.
It's fair.
Compliance doesn't work, because if I'm not doing this to you, then you just won't do it. But I want you to be committed to the thing, so you understand, oh, legitimately, all things equal, I see that this is better. I'd rather do this. I'd rather feel good. I'd rather not be anxious. I'd rather not have to wake up and immediately take a stimulant. I'd rather eat food and not feel guilty about it, right? Because the thing that I'm eating, I know is healthy for me. And then the things that you don't realize when you're 18. You'd probably rather not take a cholesterol medication when you get older, or you'd rather not take a blood pressure medication, or you'd rather not do all these things. So you'd rather not have hip injuries that keep you from doing the things you want to do when you get older. Even though older, when you're 18, it's 19, right? So it's a world away. But
yeah, it's true.
But there was a kid last night talking with me and asked me, like, how old are you, sir? And I was like, 48. The way you ask makes it weird, though. He's like, well, you're out here just like crushing it. It's like, sort of. I'm not, right? This is many, many years of doing it right, or attempting to do it right, or at least being conscious that there's a right way and a wrong way. You can crush yourself in the workout, as we were just saying. There's no such thing as too much working out. There's just not enough recovery. So, but I make sure that I do workout in the morning, and I did my nutrition, and I'm doing workout in the afternoon, and I'm gonna do my nutrition again, and then I'm gonna make sure I go to bed on time. And if I don't get enough sleep tonight, hey, sleep that understood. So I'll get a little more sleep tomorrow. So you get to 48 and fit by just being really, really conscious over time of you, your body, how you sort of feed the machine, how you sleep, and then being conscious of injuries and deficiencies that you may have. But all this is really a product of, honestly, having been in Ranger Regiment and being exposed to that sort of super broad, hey, think about everything.
It's good exposure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an adventure. It's self-awareness, just knowing yourself and knowing how your body feels and reacts. But that's definitely a way to get after it. It's just like starting with those, like leading by example. Hey, I'm here doing it. And I think that's how you shift the culture over time. But sir, thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Again, stay tuned for more. And yeah, thanks, sir.
Yeah, bro.